So this is the inaugural Engine Lab meeting, and I'm going to be recording this, so just keep in mind that if you speak, you will be recorded. And we're going to make this available on our website for anybody to see and watch if you happen to miss it live. So this is really an exciting approach and way that we're trying to connect each of us and have a venue where we can share what's going on amongst research and investigation in the Sonoran Desert and Gulf of California region, and do it in a way that can be virtual. We don't have to all try to get together in person, but to keep a momentum going, and for us to really kind of take the idea of a lab, an area where we share ideas and inquiry and events of what's going on and opportunities, and try to expand that and play a little bit loosely with the idea, and try to offer that to the members of and the larger community of Sonoran Desert researchers in the U.S. and Mexico and further beyond. So today we're going to be kicking off, and it's a great honor to have Nemer E and Alberto Búrquez to be presenting their paper, which is on the implications of the consumption of carne asada in Hermosillo. And this paper is a part of the forthcoming next-gen special issue of the Journal of the Southwest. So I just want to take a minute and kind of tell you about this very exciting, multi-authored, multi-chaptered special issue of the Journal of the Southwest, a fantastic journal that's been coming through the Center of the Southwest at the University of Arizona. And this is called Seeds in the Sand, the next generation of approaches to understanding the Sonoran Desert and Gulf of California. And this issue is co-edited and led by Carolyn O'Mara, Associate Director of NextGen, and myself, with a committee of the Board of Directors of NextGen. And it came out of the initial summit that we held in 2012 and all the different sessions that were approached. And this idea, we challenged ourselves to how do we continue these ideas of cross-disciplinary research and to really represent the cutting edge of what is research around the Sonoran Desert and Gulf of California, and examples of this cross-pollination between approaches. We put a call out for applications and got over 20 abstract submissions, and 9 of them are represented in this special issue, which is going to be in hand by the summit in October 2015 in Guaymas, Sonora. So just some examples of the chapters we're going to be having is an introductory chapter that kind of sets the stage called the Continuum of Desert Research, to really kind of put a sense of how our research and efforts are really kind of connected to all that has come before. Focusing then on from the very hard sciences and look at the forcings of the geology on the biology or surrounding the Gulf of California, and then going to an archaeological perspective of the La Playa archaeological site, which really has artifacts and burials that connect on all portions of the Sonoran Desert region. And then going further and maybe going more a little to the art side and perspectives of the lenses of art as it views Tumamoc Hill and kind of the history of the origins of desert research and the importance of that particular site that is told through an artistic lens. And then going to the story of the Pangas program is co-authored by Adrian Munguia and all the participants in the Pangas program, and really kind of the story of how do you do ecosystem-based research on small-scale fisheries in the Gulf of California, which is applicable to regions farther afield as well. And then we get to this fantastic paper, the Social and Ecological Implications of Carne Asada by Nemer E, also Associate Director of NextGen, Alberto Búrquez, who's a member of the NGen Board of Directors, Sarah Traina, and Rodrigo Renteria. So just kind of want to give a little bit of a meat of, I guess you could say, the background of this paper, which I don't know if Nemer and Alberto will get into. And this is an idea that was actually born in the pool of a place we were staying in Alamos, Sonora in the summer of 2013. And this is an idea that this was our retreat for the our first retreat of the Board of Directors of NextGen. And we're taking a break during the hot summer, and Alberto started talking about this idea of really trying to document the kind of historical comings, the origins of the consumption of carne asada and what goes into that, and then also the ecological impact of it. And this idea was quickly kind of taken over and kind of augmented and added to by Nemer and Rodrigo. And from that moment, it continued, and the momentum of these ideas went forward and over the coming year or so, and it led to the paper we're going to hear about today. And it really, this work, I think, makes us reassess the origins and cultural dominance of carne asada, in the sense that this is a branding of a region, a large portion of northern Mexico, by carne asada and wheat, which neither of which are actually native to the Sonoran Desert region. And at the same time, it really documents the ecological footprint left in the wake of its widespread consumption. So I know I have, after reading and learning about this, definitely think a little differently about what it is I'm eating when I enjoy a delicious taco of carne asada in the middle of Hermosillo or other parts of Sonora. And so with that, I want to hand it over to Nemer and Alberto. And just again, to people who are just joining us, we are recording this. So remember, at the later portions, if you decide to speak, we are going to, this will be recorded, and we'll make this available online for all. And anyway, welcome to all. And Nemer, I'll pass it over to you. And thank you so much for launching this Engine Lab meeting.
Well, first, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I am very happy because it's inaugural, because it's part of the special issue. If you are still thinking of buying that special issue, don't think of it anymore. As soon as it gets out, you should buy that, and that's the whole point of this talk today. That was a little bit of a joke. I don't know if Alberto wants to say something before we start formally with the presentation. Alberto, are you there?
Indeed. And do you hear?
Yes.
Well, great presentation. Thank you very much, Ben. It's a privilege to be part of next generation of Sonoran Desert researchers. And it was great that this idea was discussed and started as a small seed, and it grew up to produce this paper and this presentation. And I hope that it will just keep flourishing and putting more impetus on understanding the linking between ecological and cultural patterns in this amazing region of northwestern Mexico and southwestern USA. I think Nemer will do the presentation, and then we will chat and talk and answer questions. And perhaps here and there, I might just try to confuse more the audience by adding a small remark.
Yeah, just feel free to jump in whenever you want, Alberto. This is the subject is more yours than anybody else's. Before we formally start, I want to tell you, to those that are not part of the engine, that we work in Spanish and English. So you're about to see a presentation with the PowerPoint in Spanish, and I will try to do my best in English. This talk will be different to other research on meat and the political ecology of meat and beef, because we went forward with the question, what is the ecological impact of a single taco? There is much research done on the global traffic of meat. There is much done with water and beef production. But we went in a kind of reverse engineering process, going from one taco and knowing and trying to figure out how many tacos were produced daily on Hermosillo, and then going all the way to the ecological impacts of this daily practice. With that in mind, if you arrive for the first time at any airport in the world, it is unique. Every airport is unique, and most of the time, every airport is as awful as the other one. But the one in Hermosillo, despite being so little, has a different landscape than other airports throughout Mexico, and I would say throughout the world. While we are used to seeing this mass-produced keepsakes, namely tequila shots, sombreros, colorful bandanas, when we get into the Hermosillo airport, most of the things we see in these little shops is food, and it's local gastronomy. Sure, they have some handcrafts, namely ironwood figurines, but most of the things are food. Sweet salty coyota pastries, giant wheat flour tortillas, but the most representative of all the things is this little shops with big freezers that carry in them that sell cardboard briefcases with legends such as "This is the artisan product of Sonora," Sonora's cultural heritage, and so on and so forth. These briefcases are capable of carrying 6 pounds of beef, and are designed to carry these prime cuts for up to 6 hours, unrefrigerated. The authorities will allow passengers to get this as carry-on items with no questions asked if it's a national flight. In Sonora, the importance of locally raised beef is not only present in the airport. You can see it in the state's coat of arms in the lower right corner of this first figure, and the practices that once started as part of a colonial strategy to claim territory have become ingrained in daily cultural activities. First in the family setting, so in personal settings, and then becoming very popular and public celebrations. The roots of carne asada in Sonora are not particularly ancient. In terms of the colonial period, are actually part of the last part of the colonial period, as they started at mid-17th century. The dish and its consumption and the discourse is centered not only in beef, but in wheat flour tortillas. These two items, the grilled beef and the flour tortillas, go back to the period of the Jesuit missionaries when they introduced cattle to the northern frontier. In spite of being so young in terms of cultural practices, carne asada has taken deep roots in the local imaginary as well as the local ecology. Today, as we can see in the last picture of this set, the practice of carne asada has mobilized a whole industry that is centered around the production, the distribution, not only of meat but also of charcoal, and all of it targeting urban consumption. And all this happens in one of the most beautiful places in the world, the Sonoran Desert, which is considerably large and very heterogeneous in terms of ecosystems and biomes, region, full of life and different things inside. I wouldn't consider it a desert in the most strict sense of the word, as it is so biodiverse. To give you an idea, it has more than 2,000 species of plants, 1,000 species of beasts, more than 450 species of vertebrates, and it has a strong relationship with the Sea of Cortez or the Gulf of California. There's connotations to both terms that I will not discuss here. What happened when the first colonizers came from central Mexico and Mesoamerica all the way to north of the Sonoran River was that they couldn't understand the environment in terms of their own culture. This is European settlers. So there was the need to make this environment intelligible for them. And that's when they started introducing the beef. Introduction of cattle just reconfigured flora and fauna and started changing all the patterns of sustenance, of subsistence, of the people that were inside the area and of the people that started colonizing this area in European terms. With the introduction of cattle, there is an introduction of many other crops. To put it in Sheridan's words, 1,000 years of agricultural evolution just was left in the hands of the ordinary people of this land all of a sudden. So there is also a change in the productive associations in the productive links and productive ways that were carried on in the Sonoran Desert before European contact. One of the most particular practices that came to be in this period was cattle ranching that gave the opportunity to lower class Spaniards to climb socially pretty fast. These families, cattle in wealth, we can name them, helped that were helped by the creation of small local markets, starting distributing the meat to mining centers, and this helped. This was a key role in creating a meat-centric culture in the New World. We can also discuss that that the introduction of beef and wheat into the area was part of a colonizing strategy in other terms, not only in the ways that could make this new environment intelligible to settlers, but also in terms of making this semi-nomadic cultures that were already there sedentary. Most of the cultures, especially the ones who were horticultural at the time, didn't have any winter crops. So when Jesuits were constructing the missions or the missionary system, they lost all the labor in the times of winter because people started roaming the desert in search for the foods that they would find before European contact. So wheat was this strategy more powerful than any army you can imagine for the era that helped settle all these groups and bring labor into the missions and then construct the villages, the towns, and then the cities. Meat was just an agent of territorial expansion, as whenever cattle went, people went, and there was readily available protein. But the real key in the settling of the towns, villages, and cities was wheat. That is why this binomial is you cannot separate these two terms of the equation. Some of the first ecological alterations were human, in terms of human ecology. First, we had the Apache that were forced out of original territories, and with the introduction of cattle, they could start raiding and colonize these new territories, and this opened up an ecological opportunity for the Apache that were displaced. Then rustling became a common practice, not only for the Apache, but also for those of you that are familiar with Seri research. There's this very famous period in Seri history known as the Encinas War, where the Encinas ranchers started paying the cowboys for every head of the Seri Indians that they could kill, because they were cattle rustlers. And this made a lot of sense because it is much easier to kill a cow, relatively. I mean, much easier to kill a cow than to hunt down a deer. It's slower, it has more meat, it's less physical in terms of a wild animal. And when these little towns and villages were settled, then they started supplying the meat for the people in the mining areas of Sonora, which are many since colonial times. And this at the time there was no technology to preserve meat in terms of refrigeration, for example. So they had to do jerky. But before doing jerky and in the middle of the sacrifice, the families that live in this cattling ranches got together and set aside this preferred cuts of meat so they could grill them with charcoal and celebrate that they were selling all the meat to this mining areas of Sonora. It became very ingrained in the Sonoran culture. On the day of sacrifice, the farmers and the butchers, with the help of their families, would have differential roles. Women would prepare tortillas and sauces, and the men would gather around the grill in a very post-Neanderthal way of being. We all have always loved fire as a genus. The local tradition became expected and integral part of the main events of every single cattle-producing or meat-producing community in Sonora, and I would say in all the Northwest. But as I mentioned before, with flour tortillas, which I will call tortillas de harina from now on, were also an important part of the equation. North from the Rio Sonora, they are preferred over corn tortillas, even though corn is native and is more ingrained in the history of the landscape. This can only be explained because there's a perception of superiority, of ethnic superiority, that reminds people of their European heritage when they are eating wheat instead of eating corn. And elements of this attitude still linger today, and combined with current perceptions in Sonora, they link food, identity, and tradition with a notion of modernity that directly impacts the consumption of tacos to carne asada on a flour tortilla. People from other parts of northwestern Mexico would eat it in a corn tortilla still, but once they live in Hermosillo for a while, they prefer the flour tortilla for some reason. If you see the names of other Mexican foods like pozole, tlacoyo, aguautli, escamole, it is not hard to sense the Nahuatl origin of this word. But taco, even though it is discussed that it comes from Itacate, which is a discussion that is not settled and we're not going to touch here, may come from this dynamite roll, which is called taco in Spanish, that the miners used for blowing up parts of the tunnel. And if you're mining and you think of something quick that you can eat, something wrapped in a tortilla would be very, very handy in a situation when you are in a confined little place as a mining tunnel. So it became a food for the working class since the 20th century. The first literary mention comes from an early 20th century novel called Los Bandidos de Río Frío. Before that, we don't have any register of tacos in the literature, in Mexican literature, even though whenever you hear Mexican, you imagine a sombrero, a very bad soccer team playing, and tacos, of course. So it started in the 20th century as a result of modernity, when people started going from rural settings to the cities in this very industrious time in the Mexican history when everything started revolving around urban centers. People needed an easy to carry, quick to prepare food that they could eat standing up, and taco became this Mexican fast food in sort of a way. But it also reminds us, now that we eat it, some kind of nostalgia that settles us back to our rural origins as a society. And this is what is happening mostly in Hermosillo. People don't gather together as frequently or with the same meaning as when they kill the cattle, sacrifice the cattle to send most of the meat to these mining towns. Even though most of the people in Hermosillo would use their weekend to make carne asada in their backyard. Now with modernity and changing from a society of a secondary economy to a tertiary economy, an economy of services, most of people need to work fast and have their food on the go. So tacos still, even though there's a permeation of Americanized foods such as Kentucky Fried Chicken, Pizza Hut, etc. Tacos are still very ingrained with this new speed of living because it reminds them of the rural foundations of the North. There's this three gentlemen, of course, had a lot to do with tacos getting becoming even more solid in the urban culture of Hermosillo. First of all, in the 70s, after the Green Revolution, the results of the Green Revolution were applied to the Sonoran Desert by the agro titans of those days, and they tried with most of the technologies of the Green Revolution and also introduced grasses, and we're going to stop a little bit to talk about grasses later on. So the desert had to be conquered in order for the desert to be productive and not just this land that was perceived as barren. In 1992, there is a change in agrarian tenure, in land tenure, especially in rural settings. Most of this, the figure of ejido, which is a communal land that is the result of the Mexican Revolution, became privatized. So earlier, ejido land could not be sold, and after the 1992 reforms, ejido lands could be spread, could be sold, and could be owned independently by single individuals instead of communities. This, in combination with the results of the Green Revolution and the signing of NAFTA, started fostering appropriation by dispossession. So these ejidos would lose land to the cattle ranchers around them, and this process is still going on today. Not only with cattle, with many other businesses that take away rural land from other people. And here, after NAFTA and in the Salinas administration, we also have what is called in Spanish los errores de diciembre, a drop in the Mexican economy at the end of the administration and after NAFTA was being signed. Dollar went from 3 pesos per dollar to almost 7, and the Mexican economy crashed. A lot of people lost their jobs. So this is where the taquerias in Hermosillo start rising. Because the people that lost their jobs had little savings, or some of them did, and they used these savings to start selling tacos in the streets to the people that still had a job. I'm going to quote from some of the people that we interviewed during our research. It says, "My dad started this business in '86. He was unemployed and with little money. Since he was a butcher, he knew a lot of salespeople that gave meat to him. He had their trust, and he started with a little wagon to sell tacos. My dad was a butcher. My uncles wanted to put some tacos. He realized that the pay was better with his uncles than just being a butcher. And with some of his savings, he opened his business in '88. Another taco seller says the boom of taco shops came with those bad times in the economy, especially after the Salinas administration. With NAFTA, we also have a cease in Mexican agriculture. Agriculture in the United States started being subsidized and being imported into Mexico, so we substituted what we could produce in Mexico for all these imports, and we started augmenting our tertiary activities. The maquila, the sweatshops, and services is what started ruling the society. And right now, at this very moment, 86% of the 2.5, a little bit more than 2.5 million people that inhabit Sonora is urban, and 30% of those live in the state capital, Hermosillo. So from being a rural society in which harvesting and ranching was the common thing to do, it became something else, and it started changing in many ways that opened up all the gates for tacos to stay in the collective and stay as a practice that would have reminiscence of these times of rural contact. One of the taco sellers says that people come from a taco because they like fast food. The secret is that the people want them from the grill to their mouth. That is why they like carne asada. There's no time, no waiting time, and nothing is compared with that moment when you eat a freshly made taco. As I said before, the patterns of modernization started mimicking those of the U.S. In the picture, you can see this Sonora factory grill, Sonora meat factory grill, that can grill 20 pounds of beef in something like 6 minutes. So it's really fast. It's only a drive-through restaurant. There's no tables inside. There's this optimization in time, in delivery time for the food. Where there is also this loss of very personal and familiar practice that people started doing in their backyards when they became when the trend started becoming urban. And now it is justified of eating the meat, not all the social intermingling that comes with having carne asada. And with this, there is also a transformation in the landscape that we haven't talked about it. And we're going to do in just right now, actually, as soon as my slide changes. The use of arid lands as pastoral lands has a lot of ramifications, so many that we cannot tackle them in this talk or in the 6 minutes that still remain. One of those is cattle roasting. As we saw, it opened up a lot of niches for the human ecology of the place. And I don't know, Alberto, if you want to chip in with how bad is cattle rustling in terms of law in Sonora?
Well, there is this long tradition of cattle racing and cowboys in Sonora, as happened in the southwestern USA. And as a result, the cattle growers acquired so much power as to be able to keep hold of the government. And among these inheritances that we have in northern Mexico, particularly for Sonora, is that cattle rustling has a much higher penalty than, for example, homicide. Is much you stay for much shorter time if you kill a man than if you kill a cow or steal it from a ranch. And that this only highlights the role of cattle in a very marginal society where resources are exceedingly limited and the appropriation of power in land is in very few hands. And usually these hands come from far away places because the capital outside the local communities, the local native Indian communities or the local native mestizo, meaning the mixture of European and Mexicans are called mestizo communities in the area. So names with German or Italian origin are very common and commonly associated to the owners of cattle, and of course to the rulers, to the local rulers, and to the ones that are making the law. And I will close this remark. Yeah. Nemer.
Thank you, Alberto. Two other implications of cattle ranching is the modification or the alteration of water bodies, especially in arid lands. And we're going to mention a little bit about that. We're just starting to work on it. It's going to be very exciting, and it's going to be another Engine Lab meeting, I hope. First, I have to remind you to buy the Seeds in the Sand special issue of the Journal of the Southwest. And now back to our talk. And there is a modification on the landscape, and this is what we're really interested in. So There is the practice of carne asada that became a social construct and that ever since has been fed by public policy so strong that, as you heard Alberto, cattle rustling is more severely punished than homicide, and so strong that, as we mentioned on the very beginning of the talk, it is in the coat of arms of the state of Sonora. So in order to discuss what is happening to the landscape, we're going to go and talk about the impact of the introduction of pasture lands or using lands for pasture, and the ecological costs of charcoal. Those are the two main settings that we focused in. And we focused in generating all of our statistics from the primal point of how many tacos are sold in Hermosillo a year. In order to do this, we assumed that all of the cows that we could extrapolate with this very first point in our data set, how many tacos, are free range cows, and we assume that there is no import or export of meat. So it's a primal model, but it gives a very good first picture. Import of meat into the state of Sonora or out of the state of Sonora. I'm sorry. It's a very primal first calculation, but I think it is a good first picture of how things are going with cattle in the Sonoran Desert. We have this agri-titan entrepreneurship of changing the desert into something productive in westernized economical terms. So in the 70s, Zacatebúfel, Penicetum ciliare, was introduced into the Sonoran Desert, even before that. To make it more productive, they assumed that the charge capacity of pastures would unfold by a factor of 3. It did so, taking advantage or displacing all the xeric vegetation of the Sonoran Desert. It became very productive at first, but then there was overgrazing and substitution of perennials that fostered the propension to drought. And over a period of time, buffalo grass is not as productive as when first planted. I should let Alberto explain you a little bit more about buffalo grass because he's the expert, not me. So please, Alberto.
Well, no. The USDA in the 1940s decided that there was a need for controlling erosion in the southwest lands. And they brought buffalo grass from South Africa. The South Africans already had brought it from Kenya, and near the Lake Tanganyika and all the other lakes in these arid lands that are very, very similar to the Sonoran Desert, by the way. So in the 40s, it was introduced massively in the southwestern USA, and as Mexicans always, or almost always, try to copy their neighbors to the north, we brought buffalo grass to Mexico, not only to control erosion in the desert, but also as a forage. And as Nemer said, it triplicates the stocking rates of cows. So you can have 3 more cows, but this is not the most important part of the equation. Really, the bottleneck in cattle production is the production of steers, in which you have to have cows that are producing new cows, and to do so, they have to be free-range. And this is the optimum for producing steers. So they introduced buffalo grass, and in that way, it allowed the production of export steers for the international market and for the local market. The bottleneck is the production of youngsters, not the actual fattening of the cows, because that can be done with Iowa corn that is produced in very large quantities, and then you just put the cows, the young cows, in feedlots, and you fatten them, and then you just commercialize the product. So buffalo grass was a key product in increasing the production rate of meat for the market. And of course, as Nemer said, it is made at the expense of desert vegetation. And usually greed is behind most enterprises, and they put too many cows in some of these artificial prairies they made. And of course, it ended with some severe erosion problems. That is ironical, in the sense that buffalo grass was originally brought to the States as an erosion control tool. And with time, some of these areas have really diminished their production. Although by now, it is calculated that about 1 million hectares, that is more than 2 million acres in Sonora, have been transformed purposefully into buffalo grass. And probably buffalo grass is present throughout most of the Southwest, most of Mexico, down to all the arid lands, any arid lands that you could find to Argentina, and it's all over the world. But in Sonora, it's amazingly successful, and probably is in about 70 to 80% of the Sonora state as an escapee species, an invasive species, because that's the other part of the equation. No one thought, when introducing buffalo grass to northwestern Mexico, that it will escape. And you can see in Hermosillo, all around, all the mountains and plains around Hermosillo have lots of buffalo. Of course, here in Tucson too, there is a big problem, and there are big efforts to trying to eradicate buffalo grass from the area. So buffalo grass is the first step in this equation that Nemer is describing to us. Nemer.
Thank you so much, Alberto. I told you guys he was the expert. Let's go to the findings. What is the impact of urban consumption of carne asada in the forms of tacos from street vendors? I'll go quickly because there's not much time. So one of our first findings is that there is no data that links production and consumption of carne asada in Sonora. Needless to mention, in Hermosillo. Because every little, how you say novillo, Alberto? English is just steer. Every single steer needs 24.45 hectares of grass per year. So each of the inhabitants of Hermosillo, assuming that everybody is eating tacos, would need for this taco production 247,000 hectares of desert per year. To put it more clearly, we calculated, because of the amount of meat that the taco vendors in Hermosillo sell, that there's 30,500 cows and steers produced each year. And 1/3 of that production, if you go down to this, in the slide, follow the arrow down, each cow produces about 300 kilograms, but 1/3 is used for, 1/3 belongs to those cuts used in the taco stands. In order to fulfill the taco needs of the peoples of Hermosillo, 246,700 hectares are needed to sustain the 245 taquerias in Hermosillo, and that is almost 61 million tacos a year. So 61 million tacos a year is 78 tacos per inhabitant, and that amounts to intensively using 246,000 hectares of the Sonoran Desert to sustain just the street vending, the street vending of tacos. Here it was. Okay, show the calculations. I'm just gonna pass to the next one. Now, the other part of the equation is charcoal. Yes.
Perhaps the thing is that this only applies to 245 taquerias that are on the streets in Hermosillo, but does not apply to the tacos you produce in your house or for a party or in a formal restaurant.
Yes, that is true. That is true. Thank you. The other part of the equation is charcoal. Most of the charcoal in Sonora comes from mesquite. Sonora is, even though it's pretty much of it is acidic, it's a semi-arid environment, is the #1 producer of wood in Mexico. 66% of the national production. Most of it comes from very dry places like Peñasco, Sonoita, and San Luis Rio Colorado. It is a lot of plants. It is you cannot imagine. So going back to the calculations, each of this 245 street restaurants use an average of 50 kilograms of charcoal a day to prepare their tacos. If charcoal, the weight of charcoal is just 20% of what used to be wood, then the taquerias in Hermosillo would need 19 tons of desert hardwood to satisfy their demand for charcoal. Yearly, it is almost 4,000 tons of charcoal. And I would like to skip into the next slide because this is the most fragile of the most fragile part, where you can sense the most fragile part of the desert, of what is happening to the desert with charcoal production. In some, there is 80,375 hectares of desert that is being transformed into charcoal a year. So we have three main areas of the Sonoran Desert, which cannot be understood as homogeneous. It is very heterogeneous. Some parts have a lot of life, like the arroyos, where you can see these two lovely ladies walking and picking up some cerri medicine. There is also the hillsides, and there is the plains, the desert plains. The most dense and diversity of them all is the plains, and to satisfy the requirements for charcoal, you would need the least. Sorry, I read it the other way around. The least dense in diversity is the plains and the hillsides, and the most dense is the arroyos, which makes sense because the water is in there. So you would need 50,000 hectares of the wood in the arroyos to fulfill the charcoal requirements of the restaurants. From the hillsides, you would need 154,000 hectares each year, and from the plains, you would need 168,000 hectares a year. If we could ponder this, it's the 80,000 hectares of wood from the desert that you would need every single year to fulfill the demand for charcoal in the taco stand. To summarize, there is a little bit less than 300 taquerias in Hermosillo. They need 3 million kilograms of meat a year, or 30,000 cows. 61 million tacos are lost each year in the city of Hermosillo, and this consumes 12,250 kilograms of charcoal a day. With water, if you want to produce a kilogram of water a kilogram of beef in the desert, you would need from 100,000 to 200,000 liters of water just for that kilogram to be produced. And Hermosillo is one of the places where there is most of the wells per area in the whole country. It's 90,330 wells, which is explained because it's arid, right? And there is this little dams that are not accounted for, and we will start seeing this later. Or actually, Alberto's student is starting to see that in Google Earth, as far as I can understand it. To conclude, and not to take more of your time, first let me tell you that if you're still thinking of buying the special issue of the Journal of the Southwest, you should buy it. Don't hesitate. Then, just to conclude, even though it is a primal approximation, what is happening to this very fragile environment can be potentially dramatic. We have seen throughout this lecture, throughout this talk, that eating a taco of carne asada holds in a single bite all the recent history of the state, from the colonial period into current day. But it also holds, every single bite holds a little bit of the ecological deterioration of the place. So we have to start thinking of ways of measuring this better, and in order to try to plan for better cattle managing practices without quitting to this lovely, lovely food that is carne asada. Thank you for your time.
Fantastic, just great. Thank you so much, Nemer and Alberto. Couldn't imagine a better kickoff to the Engine Lab meeting. We still have a little bit of time remaining, so let's, if anyone has some questions or comments, please feel free to chime in now. Simply just press the red microphone button next to your name under participants, and that will unmute yourself, and we'd love to hear from you.
Well, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're here.
Okay. I'm Rick Wilk. I'm actually in Belize right now, but my question is there something that you might call green carne asada, in the sense of an alternative that's going to be less damaging to the environment? I'm thinking about the movement towards grass-fed beef in the United States, for example.
First, let me ask Ben if we wanna lump all the questions and then do a response.
No, let's just field them one at a time.
Okay. You want to contribute to that, Alberto? I have perhaps the most radical answer, but I think yours is going to be a little bit more sober.
Well, radicalize it, and I can give later my idea.
Well, let me open again the PowerPoint. Thank you, Rick, for your question, first of all, and sorry about the logistics and the times. We were not prepared for this question, but I think the answer would be change all the industry to mealworm, because if you take into account the energy use, if you take into account the amount of space, and all the protein produced, it is less harsh to the environment, and it can develop a lot of employment as well, and high quality protein. That is the rapid answer. That's all.
Well, there are cricket bars for sale in the United States.
I beg your pardon.
Oh, there are energy bars that are made with flour that's made from crickets, which are available now in the U.S. for those who want to eat green, supposedly.
Well, there's the opposite. I've also seen the insect lobby, but trying to be rational, I said it is a radical answer, but trying to be rational, I think if you see the little chart you have on the right side of the slide, it makes a lot of sense to change to this. Can you see it, right?
Yeah, I can see it.
So in terms of greenhouse emissions, land use, and energy use, it makes much more sense to eat mealworms than to eat anything else. I don't know if it's going to be as tasty, to be honest.
Are there any other questions we have?
I can add to it. Say, beef meat is red, and there is no way we can turn it into green. Beef is extremely expensive in converting plant energy into meat. And it's the worst of all. David Pimentel has done extraordinary work on assessing the conversion efficiencies of different domestic animal species. And beef is the worst. Say, chicken or ostriches are much better in the conversion process. But even so, say, by any ecological means, at best, what you can do is to obtain a transformation between 10 and 100 from plant tissue to animal tissue. And the best, and you gave the answer, Rick, is of course switching to much more efficient transformers like insects. That's something that was discovered a long time ago by Native Americans. Native Americans and Aboriginal people in Australia and many African groups discovered that insects are an extraordinary source of protein and are exceedingly efficient in the transformation from plant tissue into protein. And that probably will be the future. And I would love seeing cricket tacos as a good substitute for carne asada. Of course, the other part of the answer is you can have green carne asada, but at a cost, and the cost will be many orders, say several orders of magnitude higher than what we are paying today for it, because we are not including all the externalities. Say the cost of environmental destruction, the cost of the water, the cost of the species extinction, and so on. So we might transform it, but then we'll have to pay $50 for a taco.
Could I ask a follow-up question?
Sure, and then we'll close it.
Okay. Pimentel is really talking about conversion of calories into calories. The issue here, though, is that it's the composition of the calories in the sense that grass growing out in the Sonoran Desert cannot be turned into chicken, and it can't be turned into fish, and it can't be turned into ostrich. It probably can't be turned into mealworms either. So I think for certain kinds of ecological zones and territories, probably the only way that humans are going to be able to extract food is going to be with grazing animals. That said, maybe we should just close them to grazing, because otherwise the animals are causing an ecological catastrophe. But I don't think we can close it purely on the basis of calorie conversion. That's all I'm saying. Thank you. It was a great presentation. I enjoyed it.
Thanks to you. I'm glad. I don't know how to respond to this follow-up question. I think that surely grazing is the most cost-effective way to transform these calories into calories. But the amount of technology that we need to make this mealworm farm is It's a great expense, but it can be doable in very small spaces. It's not a bad idea. It's pink, but so much.
Less than pigs.
Well, thank you guys. I think we'll have to leave the discussion there. Thank you everybody for joining us for this new experiment of how to link all of us from Belize to Michoacan, Tucson, to California. How do we keep this energy and momentum going? So again, this is just the first. Next month, on August 19th, please come and join us. Christopher Scott, the director of the Consortium for Arid Lands between Arizona and Mexico, will be speaking. And again, taking us back to kind of a social, ecological space, talking about water resources and global change from Arizona, Sonora borderlands to the arid Americas. So again, that's August 19th, the same time, on Wednesday at noon, Arizona time. And then following that, we have a great presentation in September by Heather Leslie and Javier Basurto on their works on community fishing and operationalizing the common pool resource theory from Eleanor Ostrom, a recent paper in PNAS that's really making a lot of waves. And then after that, we're going to lead you into the summit of the Next Gen Summit at the end of October. We're going to kind of have a presentation on what to expect and answer any questions and get you guys as excited about that as we are. Isn't this just a fantastic presentation by Nemer and Alberto? This chapter really touches on a lot of what really can be done with the collaborative and cross-disciplinary approach. And as Nemer mentioned, it's going to be part of the special issue of the Journal of Southwest. It's Next Gen. And it is our intention that if you attend the summit, you may actually get one without having to pay the full price. So another incentive there. All right, we'll close it there. We are going to, again, post this on our website. We'll send out the information with that. And we look forward to seeing you at future events. So thank you very much for joining us. You can maybe talk a little bit briefly more about the next stages of the research. You said you were going to push beyond where you took it to for the special issue, and I'm curious what comes next.
Oh, well, there are many possible avenues of future research. One obvious one is to try to explore the carne asada in Argentina and in other places where it's also a traditional way of life and eating. The gauchos and the cowboys and the vaqueros are the same breed. And that will be one. Another one, of course, is to start to refine our calculations for Sonora, because the actual estimations we made are only for the city of Hermosillo and only for the street vendors of carne asada, and that does not include into the equation the household production of carne asada for local consumption at home, or the weekend, or the baseball game production of tacos de carne asada that are not associated strictly to street vendors. So that will be a refinement of our work, and of course to include more cities in northwestern Mexico, and perhaps the Güero Canelo, for example, in Tucson, and the many taquerias that are in South Tucson that are also extremely important in Arizona. A third avenue will be to explore the dynamics of the link in between the production of tacos de carne asada and the flour tortillas and the flour industry. And of course, the fourth avenue will be the role of water in all this, because water is the main commodity, after all, in producing the food for the cows, in maintaining the cows alive, in driving all the wheat and the vegetables that go into the salsas and everything else, even the customers. So water economy is the basis of the whole chain. And we are doing, as Nemer mentioned, a small project now in Sonora in which we are measuring how much water is appropriated by the check dams and charco dams that that dot the Sonoran Desert all over Sonora. Any comment, Nemer?
Can you hear me now?
Any comment,
Yes.
Nemer? Yes, we can.
Well, there's basically the water is what was uniting our common views for the future of the research. Also, we have tried to hook the whole subject of the meat producing industry and tackle eating in Hermosillo to the larger concept of environmental violence, which we have presented in Nayarit last year with some success. It still needs some refinement in order to be presented as a text somewhere. So basically, the environmental violence is very subtle, very slow violence that cannot be considered violence in the most orthodox terms, because it is not direct, it is not physical, but it will have consequences on future generations. And we have talked a little bit about that in Nayarit last year in Nemer, and I still don't give the diploma to Alberto, only PDF, but that's another subject. And perhaps this time we worked with a lot of data that was official but was not, even though we went there with the letters from our institutions to COFEPRIS, to the sanitation office in Hermosillo or in the state of Sonora, to know how many street vendors there were. They would tell us an estimate, but they wouldn't allow us to see any official database or give us any official letter stating that it is in fact close to 245. So we had to work with data told to us by an official authority, but in an out of the record way. And if we need to, that is another whole issue. The government of Sonora has no data, but they don't care to have it. So if we can tackle this in terms of why is it important in terms of ecology in the long run for all the people in Sonora or for all the people in Northwest and Southwest of the United States at large, then we can convince the authorities that the release of information, which is a right under the Mexican Constitution, should be prioritary for any research done in subjects such as this one.
Fascinating. Great. All right. Well, I think we'll close the space now. Thank you both again for a fantastic presentation, and for all you guys continue to hang out and learn more about the carne asada and the culture and the ecological impact. So, very good. Any last parting words from you guys?
Thank you so much for the invitation. We're honored in many ways, because we have seen the engine from its very beginnings as a unique and marvelous idea, all the way to this big association. We have seen the idea of the journal going through a similar path, and we are very happy that you have chosen our paper to be the one presented in the inaugural meeting. And I personally hope we could hold up to the expectations. Alberto.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Really, we are very happy to be part of Next Generation, and we feel very much distinguished to have been the first in this series of webinars. Thank you very much, Ben. It's great to be with you all.
Yeah, thank you. Could not have been a better start. All right. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next time.
See you then.
Bye.